to Startup School with Startup Canada and the B Corp Network. Startup School is a program of Startup Canada Live, a webinar series dedicated to the professional development of Canada's entrepreneurs and community leaders. My name is Catherine Forrest, and I'm the Communications, Marketing, and Government Relations Manager here at Startup Canada. I'll be your host for today, and I'll introduce our featured guest in just a few minutes. Today's Startup School topic is the B Corp way, using your business as a force for good, and is presented by B Corp Network. We have an amazing expert guest joining us today, Joyce Su. Joyce serves a movement of Canadians using business as a force for good, known as certified B Corps. Previous to her time at B Lab, she was at the Mars Center for Impact Investing as the manager of B Corp and social impact metrics, which grew the B Corp company throughout Ontario and other provinces. We're going to jump right into today's class, but a reminder to our audience that you can ask questions at any time throughout the hour using the YouTube comment section and by using the hashtag StartupSchool on Twitter. So without further ado, welcome to the program, Joyce. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Catherine. So I'm just going to jump right into it, and we're going to start with the awkward screen sharing. And I want to make sure that everything is okay. So let me know, Catherine, if everything is working well. Are we good?
It looks good. Sorry, I was muted there.
That's okay. Perfect. All right. So I'm going to get started right away. So by the end of this webinar, the idea is that you would be able to do three things. Number one, answer any common questions around B Lab and B Corp certification, which you may have heard floating around. Number two, identify 1 to 2 reasons that B Corp certification could be right for your company. And 3, just know the path in terms of what to expect and what you're looking at. So let's just take a pause here and recognize that we are in a moment of a historic global culture shift. We're looking at finding a way to harness the power of business to help address society's greatest challenges. And I think no matter where you stand, we believe that building a more inclusive economy can only be good for everyone. This person here is Milton Friedman, a 1970 economist, very well renowned. And one of the ideas that he had used was that there is one and only one social responsibility of business. And that is to use its resources and engage in activities designed to increase its profits. And if we think about where we stand today, I think we can all agree that that's not necessarily the best way for business to engage in society, and that hasn't had the best outcomes for us if you think about how divisive we are today. Let's look back at history. 20th century history was really focused on shareholder value at any cost, at all cost. And I think we're changing, or we're moving from that mentality and moving to 21st century where we're focused on a stakeholder value. So how do we generate for profit, but also generate value for our community, the environment, for employers at the same time? And so the Certified B Corporation is one way that we're doing that. B Corps are leaders of a global movement of people using business as a force for good. And at B Lab, our vision is that all companies will compete to be best for the world. And the reason why we do this, our vision is to see a more shared and durable prosperity. We're not talking about government and nonprofit, we're talking about for-profit business. So you may have seen this logo around. B Corp certification at its core is very similar to fair trade coffee, or similar to organic to a bag of apples, except it looks at the whole area of a business, all holistic points of a business, as opposed to just one product or a service line. So what is a B Corp? There are kind of 3 things that really identify what a B Corp is. They meet verified higher levels of social and environmental performance. As I had mentioned before, it is a certification, so there is an assessment that you have to go through, about 180 questions that talks about ways that you treat the environment, how you look at your workers, your community impact as well, how you treat your consumers as well. And there is an additional transparency and accountability piece, which we'll go through as I walk through the rest of our presentation. So let's start with something fun, Ben & Jerry's. I think everybody's familiar with this ice cream company. Ben & Jerry's is a pretty well-known B Corp, and they certified back in 2012. On the right side, you can see a scorecard, similar to like a nutritional label on your cereal box. It goes through the different areas that Ben & Jerry's scored well in. So one of them would be the environment, workers section. You'll see there's an area for customers, community, and governance, and their overall score is 101. On the left is highlights of where they did really well. So on the workers section, an example would be that their lowest paid hourly worker receives 46% above the living wage. And the living wage is definitely different from minimum wage. The community aspect is that over 40% of board and management are from underrepresented populations. In the environment aspect, 100% of US pint containers are made with FSC certified paperboard. So this is just an example of what goes into the certification, what's the foundation and underlying piece of it. You're going to notice that in the customer section, it says not applicable. In the customer area, that's where we look at how your product or service has a benefit impact on its customer. And while we can all agree that ice cream is delicious, it's not necessarily what we would say would provide positive benefit to the customer. That being said, Ben & Jerry's is still a great B Corp. So right here, I've got an example of a few B Corps that you may or may not recognize. There are almost 2,000 B Corps in the global community. And there are just a few here that I'd like you to give you some time to look at to give you a good idea of the type of B Corps that make our community. First off, like I mentioned, almost 2,000 B Corps, over 50 different countries, and over 50 different industries worldwide. So it's not necessarily going to be your most usual suspects. You know, Bullfrog Power, for example, is a B Corp, and they work in clean energy. BDC is also a B Corp, and they're a bank. And so different types of businesses all range. And so this is meant to be a very inclusive movement. All different types of businesses can be a part of that. And so you'll see some of the Canadian shout-outs. Beau's All Natural Brewery, which is one of our favorite B Corps. There's Mita Oui, Au Liberté that does fair trade shoes, Tentree that also does sustainable clothing, Shandos in Alberta, which is a construction company. So again, very diverse range of businesses. If we take a look at our Canadian context, there are about 180 Canadian B Corps, and this is kind of a fun map to give you an idea where all the B Corps stand. And so a majority of them are in Ontario. We've got a large community and vibrant community in BC and growing communities all in other provinces as well. And so this is also meant to be a diverse community throughout all the different provinces across Canada. Here's an example of a B Corp from California called Fetzer, which is a winery. This is just to show you how companies use the B Corp logo. And what it's really about and what it means to different companies. And so Fetzer is a wine that you can find in liquor stores across Canada. And you'll see that the role of Josh Prigge is actually the Director of Regenerative Development, which is a new type of title that you don't see every day. And this is a winery that's really committed to sustainability and how they get their grapes and really being a force for good in the world. Closer to home is a Canadian company called Traction on Demand, which is our CRM consulting and software development firm based out of BC. And they've got offices in Montreal and Toronto as well. And they're a rapidly growing tech company. And they really see B Corp as a way to communicate their values, which can be hard for a tech company. And so what they're trying to explain is what they're about. And so they pay people fairly, they really stay local. They focus on making long-term choices, and that's what B Corp is really about, is how do we have a more long-term view in terms of how we do business. This is just a quote from Mose Mercario, the CEO of Patagonia, a clothing company that has been really well known for its sustainable fabrics and how it does business. And she says that the B Corp movement is one of the most important of our time. Built on the simple fact that business impacts and serves more than just shareholders, it has an equal responsibility to the community and to the planet. And I'm going to keep moving forward for the sake of time here. So the question is, why do we certify? And there are many different reasons, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I do want to be able to draw on some of the main pieces to as you think about your company, as you may be a startup or you may be a bit further along, why is B Corp certification something that may be right for you? Maintaining mission is one thing that we always talk about around finding a way to embed B Corp into embed values around how you treat your environment, your consumers, community, and employees, and building that into the fabric of your business. And we'll talk a little bit about the accountability legal piece further on. Another example is differentiating from others. I think it's pretty clear that there is a trust gap, whether it's a trust gap with the media, trust gap with companies, and knowing that what companies are actually putting out there and what you actually believe as to be true, there's definitely the gap there. And what B Corp seeks to do is help bridge that gap. One of the ways is by having a third-party certification allows businesses to communicate to their customers that, the things that we say we do, we actually do. And one of the ways is to be able to get some sort of third-party standard to prove it. I think I have been on the end of the spectrum. I own a Volkswagen diesel Golf wagon. For those of you that have been following the news around this in the past year, it's been a very disappointing experience as a customer to be on the other end of that. To buy into a brand and to believe in it, and then only to find out that it's not true. And so I think as consumers, we are appropriately skeptical of what businesses put out there. And so having a way to differentiate has been a really strong piece. The second piece the reason why a lot of companies become B Corp certified is to benchmark and improve their performance. A great example is Etsy. So you may be familiar with this online artisanal platform where you can sell handmade goods. Etsy, when they first certified, came in with an 80, and you need an 80 out of 200 to certify and pass. And so 80 is great. It is a high bar, and Etsy passed with the 80. When they showed their employees that they had received this 80, their employees said, you know what, I think we can do better. And so they shut their offices down for a day. On the weekend, employees decided to volunteer their time to come in and do a hackathon. And so they looked at their assessment, the 180 questions they was made available to their employees, to come up with ways to actually come up with new policies, ways for Etsy to increase its impact. By the end of that day, they also had a budget that they were working towards. They had increased their point score by 25 points and moved to 105. And I don't think that Etsy really cared about the score, but what they were really excited about was the fact that they were able to get their employees deeply engaged in making their company a better place in general. And so having the tool, this being a part of the B Corp community, was one way to help benchmark and improve performance. When a company certifies, they need to recertify every 2 years. And so there's this idea of being on a journey. Some people say, 80 out of 200 is a failing grade. Why would you use 80? But in fact, it's really not about who's in and who's out. This is a journey that we're on to be best for the world, not just best in the world. And we're constantly trying to improve and move forward. And so this is not about saying who's the best and who's the worst, but how do we continually move up this mountain of sustainability? The fourth piece, this is one that I find most B Corps are telling me they're seeing some very tangible evidence around, and that's attracting and engaging talent. And for those of you in the startup space will know that talent is the core piece of your business. Oftentimes, finding and attracting talent is really difficult because there's a lot of startups out there. There's a lot of competition around finding good people. And when we think about this new generation of workers, employees, they want to work for a company they believe in. They no longer want to separate their 9 to 5 and do some work on their 9 to 5 and do the things they care about afterward. They want to bring their whole selves to work. And so B Corps offer that ability and opportunity to their employees. And time again, I hear people saying that once they certified, the quality of candidates that they were able to attract actually increased. We actually have a really great partner with another B Corp called Fetzer, which is a hiring platform that helps B Corps find ways to attract talent and manage that process, which is a really tough thing for startups. And having that partnership has been something that's been really beneficial. The other area of why B Corps want to certify is they want to collaborate with peers. Companies like to work with values aligned and like-minded businesses. So one of our B Corps that we talked about was Bose, which is a brewery. They decided to collaborate with all the other B Corp breweries across North America to create a B Corp beer called Brew the Change. In this beer, they also sourced B Corp honey, they sourced B Corp cranberry juice, and the result is a delicious tasting beer that they were able to showcase at the Craft Brewing Association as a way to drive awareness to what was happening around B Corps and to drive awareness to the craft brewery industry about why B Corp was important. This was a really fun project to be a part of, and I think increasingly more B Corps are finding ways to work together across industries to shed a light on what it means to use your business as a force for good. This piece relates to capital. A lot of businesses obviously are saying access to capital is a key challenge for B Corps. Not only is access to capital a challenge, but finding the mission-aligned capital is also a big issue. So if you care that your business is going to have a social and environmental piece to it, you're going to want to make sure that your investor also sees the same thing. So oftentimes people will say, how do I know that I've got the right investor who's the right partner for me as we scale and grow our business? One of the ways is to, as you certify, or you may hear of this GEARS rating, which is the same process as certification. It's just a rating system that you get. This makes you helps you stick out among other businesses to say, this is what my business is about, and I'm looking for investors that understand and want to partner along the same line and vision that we have. All right, so the big question, who can certify? So these are for-profit companies only of any size. You can be over 1,000 people, you can be just one person, you can be a worker-owned company. Any industry and geography. So like we said, there are over 50 countries that have B Corps. Canada was the first country outside of the US to certify B Corp. That being said, your assessment is going to be customized based on the size, industry, and geography of your company. Any type of legal structure, as long as you're a for-profit company. And here's the catch. You need to be over 1 year old in order to certify. So some of you are starting up right from the beginning. I'm going to explain a little bit about the pending B Corp program that we have for startups. But we do require you to be 1 year old. And the reason why is we want to be able to verify that you've been doing the things that you say that you're doing, also that you've got a good business structure in place. And sustainability includes profitable sustainability as well. So how does a company certify? You've been on this webinar for a good 20 minutes and you're ready to sign up. The first one is really starting the performance requirements. So you need to get on the impact assessment. Before I get further into what the assessment is about, I need to iterate that the B Impact Assessment is a free tool. So whether you decide to certify or not, you're interested in learning about impact, I would really recommend that you log onto the B Impact Assessment and just explore it. This is a public good that we've created as a nonprofit at B Lab. Over $10 million of investment have been put into this tool. And we want it to be used even for those who don't certify. We realize that the more businesses that start tracking their impact, the better. That's the beginning of the way to move the needle around creating a more shared and durable prosperity. So I would say, if you have no desire to certify, still use the impact assessment tool. It is something that I promise will drive value to your business. The second piece is meeting the legal requirement, and we'll talk about that as I go into my next slide. There is a path. We do require B Corps to amend their articles of incorporation. I know it sounds scarier than it is. And if you haven't incorporated yet, even better, you can make the changes right up front. And the last one is to make it official. We ask all our B Corps to sign the Declaration of Interdependence, which talks about how businesses are linked and that we're not on our own, that we do the things and actions that we have impact on others. And there is certification fees based on your annual revenue. So the impact assessment, as I mentioned, if you go onto www.bimpactassessment.net, there is a free confidential online tool to measure and manage your social and environmental impact. Again, if you're just curious about how your business is doing and you want to benchmark along other sides of businesses, this is a great tool to get your feet wet on. I mentioned that there were 2,000 B Corps certified, but there are over 50,000 users of the BIA impact assessment, which shows that there are a lot of people, a lot of businesses that want to learn about their company. And while the B Corp assessment or the B certification may not be right for them, they still find this tool very valuable. The impact assessment assesses your business on 5 different areas, very similar to like that tag that you saw on Ben & Jerry's, exactly like that. We'll ask you questions about your customer impact. Your governance structure is an important piece. While you've got some great ideas and things that you do, how do you formalize that so that it's embedded into your company? How do you treat your workers? Some of the questions we'll ask about pay equity. It talks about your performance. Do you have professional development opportunities for your workers? It also looks at your community impact. Do you donate time with your community? Does your company reflect the diversity of the community in which you operate? The environment section, I think you guys are pretty well familiarized with it, and that relates to how what's your environmental impact? Do you find ways to reduce your carbon footprint, like carbon offsets, for example, and so forth. This is just a snapshot of what the assessment looks like. So I know 180 questions sounds really scary, and we also have a quick impact assessment version, which is about 20 minutes long to do and kind of the best of way to start the assessment. Here's an example of what it looks like. So in the governance and mission engagement section, questions will ask about your mission statement. Does your company have a corporate mission statement? And does it include any of the following? The assessment is fully multiple choice, mainly multiple choice. And when somebody asks me for advice on how to take the assessment, my #1 piece of advice is always to use your best guess. Sit down and just blow through it. The best thing to do is get a good benchmark and use your best guess, because oftentimes it's right. And oftentimes when you go through the full certification process, you will definitely have an opportunity to go back, change it, find the correct answers. This is meant to be a journey and a process. It is not a test. And we hope it's supposed to be something that's fun. Here's another example, and this is the workers and worker ownership piece. The question is, what percentage of companies is owned by full-time workers who are non-executive employees and non-founders? So again, this impact assessment is meant to reflect best practices. It doesn't mean that you are a horrible company if you don't have any of these things. What this does, it just gives you an idea, excuse me, idea of what other companies are doing that are best practices that are top in class around their impact. I think that's something that's really cool about this, is that even though you may not have these implemented, it just gives you some examples or ideas of how you can implement them into your own company and what works for you. Most businesses, when they take the assessment, oftentimes over half of the questions will not be applicable to them, and I want to encourage you to not feel discouraged if that is the case for you. So what is this legal requirement that I've been talking about? We actually require all our certified B Corps to amend their articles of incorporation to state that they will consider other stakeholders in their decision making. It's not rocket science. I'm sure that many businesses do consider other stakeholders, but if we think about the whole Milton Friedman model about business operating for the sole purpose of maximizing shareholder value, that is at odds with the idea of considering the environment and the consumers and customers and employees. So how do we reconcile that? And one way that we do at B Corp is to make that amendment in your shareholder agreement, in your articles of incorporation. And what that does is it basically makes an explicit stance to say, as a business, you're going to do more than just maximize shareholder value. You will consider other stakeholders. And it ensures that the mission can survive over time. And so the idea is to embed this spirit of B Corp into your legal documents. The impact assessment is a very outwardly external demonstration of B Corp. And I always like to liken the amendment to your articles as a heart piece, right? So one is your body, it's the actions that you do. And making the amends to your legal is changing the hearts and minds of a business. And that's a really cool way, I think, of describing the transformation of a company in terms of asserting to higher standards of your social and environmental performance. I also talked about making it official. You sign a B-Lab term sheet. There is a declaration of interdependence and annual certification fees based on a tiered structure. These fees are based on US dollars, and your revenue is also going to be based on a US dollar piece. So for those of you who are under a year old or who have yet to even incorporate, there is a way for you to engage, and that is to obtain a pending B Corp status. This is a one-year program that is designed to help startups understand and improve their impact. So the first piece is to protect your mission. If you have not created or incorporated yet, we encourage you to start with putting the B Corp language in it. And that language is available online. If you go to bcorporation.net, you're able to find what the legal amendment looks like and to put that into your legal documents. All the 180 B Corps that you have seen in Canada have made that amendment. We did consult with Blake's to understand what that legal requirement was and what the implications are. And there are no legal liability issues. What it does is just helps protect that mission. Number two is the idea of measuring what matters. So we do require you to go and just start measuring. And even though if you may have none of these policies in place, it's a great idea to start building your business with the B Corp values in mind. And a lot of new startups use the assessment as a way to, we call it a framework or a roadmap to guide them as how they want to create their business. And then 1 year from now, then you can fully certify. So to obtain this pending B Corp status is to embed the articles of incorporation, embed that B Corp language, create the measure what matters, and then there is a $500 fee to get the B Corp status. And a lot of companies use that as a way to attract investment, to attract their employees, new engagement. But again, you can do all these things without having to be a pending B Corp, but sometimes it's kind of great to have that. So this last slide talks a little bit to what B Corp has been doing. B Corp is one of the 20 moments that have mattered over the last 20 years. That was quoted by Fast Company. In the 20 moments of the last 20 years, the iPhone was listed on that, so it's pretty cool to be part of the iPhone list. Fortune magazine also wrote, "Be like a B Corp is one of the 5 business trends to master in 2016. One of the things I really want to reiterate is that being a certified B Corp is the idea of an Olympic athlete. It's definitely difficult to get 80 out of 200, but it's not difficult to try to be like a B Corp. And so again, use the B Impact Assessment as a way to find out what B Corps are about and implement 1 or 2 different ideas that sound great to you, and use it as a continual journey and roadmap as we continually move along this space of using business as a force for good. U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright had once said, "I often wonder to what extent business can help society in its goals to alleviate poverty, preserve ecosystems, and build strong communities and institutions." The B Corp movement shows us that business, the driving force of our economy, can be an agent of change. And that's a really powerful statement, that I believe to be true, that business has a really important role to play in affecting our communities and our economy. And what kind of role will you play? We're here to redefine success in business. We want to create the new economy. We want to build a better business. And so we're asking you to join us. We want you to compete to not only be the best in the world, but the best for the world. And that's all I have for my presentation today. I'm happy to open it up to questions. And so I think I'm gonna just close this, and I believe I need to stop my screen sharing.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Joyce. This is definitely a very popular topic within the network here at Startup Canada. And I love how you're talking about the journey to B Corp as that, a journey and a process towards greater social good for Canada. So I love this. So a lot of information that we heard over the past hour, from who can become a B Corp to why to become a B Corp, to the benefits from marketing to attracting talent. And you were mentioning actually a curious a stat in there that noted that the majority of B Corps in Canada are in Ontario and BC. Do you know why that is?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that there are definitely a lot of businesses in Ontario. I'm also locally based in Ontario, so there is a piece to that as well. And then I think there is something to be said about West Coast values, and I think in the US it's very similar. There's a lot of B Corps in the Pacific Northwest and also in California. And I think it just has to do with the culture and mentality of that community to say, of course, business should be considering these holistic things as opposed to just maximizing shareholder value.
Excellent. And you were mentioning the vast number of B Corps that are, or the vast number of B Corps, but also the vast number of companies that are interested in becoming B Corps. And one thing that I do love as well is that you have this pending B Corp status for those young early stage entrepreneurs who are just getting started and under that year mark. And so my question then is, is there a community that, can assist these young pending B Corp companies? And when I say young, I don't mean in age, I mean in time from the startup. So is there a company or a community that they can kind of tap into and, be mentored and learn from one another to really achieve a true B Corp status?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I don't think we have a formal community in a way. I think the local communities that we had mentioned is something that's been kind of sprouting in a very organic level. Though we've got a large percentage of B Corps in Ontario and BC, there are still very vibrant communities across Canada. Last week, I was just in Edmonton, and in Alberta. In Edmonton, there is like a small portion of B Corps who are small but mighty. And we had gathered a group of a lot of new businesses that were interested in certifying. And the B Corps themselves find ways to help mentor them. I think there's a really interesting opportunity for universities. There's, the net impact clubs across universities where students find ways to assist new companies as they consider their social and environmental performance. And we've created toolkits that allow students to be able to use that and help them when they start consulting with businesses as well. Alongside of that, I can think of one really cool organization in Ontario, Innovate Guelph. They created a boot camp, for example. There's also a boot camp that had been happening in Edmonton and in Nova Scotia, where they just brought new businesses in and said, let's spend, an afternoon together and let's talk through some of the challenges you may have as businesses with your peers, and let's find ways to troubleshoot them together.
That's amazing. We just actually got off a national tour where we talked to some academics, to some students, as well as within on-campus startup hubs. So it's awesome to know that those resources are available, and also an opportunity for our Startup Canada communities to perhaps, take advantage of those toolkits and just build up that B Corp championship within the community. So how can they access these resources?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say go on to bcorporation.net. That website, we're currently in the phases of revamping it. So it does take a while to figure out some of the spaces. But if you also go to bcorporation.net/educators, that is a section that's really focused on secondary education and people who want to use it as a way to update their curriculum. I think, Catherine, you talked a lot about like the academics as a real driver for this space. I think our new generation of students find this as something really fascinating, but kind of imperative to how they do their business. And so what we're trying to do is create resources that are very plug and play. And so if you're an academic out there wanting to find ways to bring this to your group, the information on their website is definitely ways to engage in a great way. And there's also ways to contact us if you have some more ideas about how you can spread the word or help other businesses engage.
Excellent. So we are tweeting out these links as we speak to the B Corp toolkit. So anyone joining us via Twitter or via YouTube, please take a look at those. We are opening up to questions from the Twitterverse. You can ask Joyce any questions that you'd like via the hashtag Startup School. But before we get to those, I do have one more question, Joyce, actually. So what is your top advice for entrepreneurs, early stage entrepreneurs who are looking to achieve this B Corp status? You've outlined some of the process, but perhaps are there roadblocks that entrepreneurs often face, and
Yeah.
what kind of warning signs can we give to our entrepreneurs to help them overcome these roadblocks?
Sure. I think that what I often found in my interaction with entrepreneurs is that a lot of them are perfectionists and they want to get everything right and they want to get everything perfect. And that can be a bit of a stumbling block in terms of progress, because an entrepreneur will take a look at the assessment and they'll say, I don't do that, I don't do that, I don't do that, I'm horrible, I'm just going to like ignore this because it's making me anxious. And I would say don't use the tool as a way to benchmark yourself right away. Use it as a way to just be, to open your creativity and imagination of what your business can be. And number one, your business model has to be sound. It's got to be strong. But the assessment can help you think through how your business model can be strengthened and be more resilient. And so there are some ways to use it as a way to create a different way of doing business. And so I often tell people, when you use the assessment, find a time to sit down, take off that judgment jacket that you're wearing, and just read it as assessment as a way to provide cool ideas of what's happening. We also have a lot of resources within the assessment. So, you may not have a code of conduct, but we have a resources tool guide that'll say, oh, you don't have one, but here are 3 other B Corps that have great code of conducts. Feel free to use that as your guideline, tailor it for your use. And we want to make it easy for you to join in on this journey. And so that's what I would say, is just use the impact assessment tool as a roadmap. And if you're not ready, don't feel bad. Put it aside. You can always come back to it. And the best thing about the tool is that you can save your answers. You can come back to it in 3 months, 6 months, whenever. A tool does update every 2 years, but just to let you know that it's still going to be there when you come back, when you're ready. Excuse me.
Bless you. And what is the average time that it would take for a company to achieve this status, right from when they go into the impact assessment tool to the final certification?
That's a great question, and I would have to say that it varies. But on average, I'll give you an idea of what the process looks like. So on average, we'd say 2 hours for yourself to do the assessment, and those 2 hours will work if you do what I say and you just guess, use your best guess. When you finish your assessment, oftentimes there's a submit button at the end. If you get over 60 on your first try, I would say click the submit button and say, I'm interested in certification. You'd get an email that would say, okay, within 4 to 6 weeks, we want you to schedule your review call with a person from our standards team in Pennsylvania. It takes 4 to 6 weeks to schedule just because of the backlog that we have. But that 4 to 6 weeks gives you time to go back to your assessment and update any of the things that you weren't sure about. They'll also ask you to upload about 10 pieces of documentation based on how you answered throughout the assessment. Those 4 to 6 weeks is a great time for you to go back, find the documentation, update your assessment, and upload it. And then there's about a 90-minute review call that will happen, where you'll go on the phone, you'll sit down with a standards person. It's not meant to be scary. They just want to help you understand how you've interpreted the questionnaire, and just go through the way that you've answered questions. After that, they may ask you to submit more documentation. So we're talking about, like, on average, 3 months, I think, for a company that may have documentation in place. Oftentimes for startups where they may not have any documentation in place, it's going to take them a bit longer, because they don't have those pieces. And so it's just a matter of time of sitting down and embedding and writing those pieces down. And again, we have resources to help them, but that can be a bit longer as well. And then for the really large companies that, over 1,000 people, those can take, up to a year. And so we tell you to, if you're interested in certifying next year, definitely get started and feel comfortable with the process now.
I have to reiterate again, I love how you are talking about it as a process and as something, it's a journey, it's something that people can work towards, and it's not a yes or no answer. So I think that really speaks to the entrepreneurs. And can you tell us, you mentioned Bose as an excellent Canadian case study, but are there any others that you could speak to within Canada that, some of our entrepreneurs across sectors could relate to see, just to show, this is something that's for me. I can relate to this company that did it, so it's something that I could also do.
Yeah, there's a few different companies. I mean, I think I could start off with, so Bose is more of a more of a consumer product. I did talk about some of the tech companies that we have. We have a company called Textbooks for Change. And what they do is they are an online platform that helps sell used textbooks to students. And whatever they also donate a large portion of that, and whatever they don't donate, they actually recycle. So that's a really cool, simple kind of online idea. It was a tech startup that started a few years ago, and they had a real idea of embedding value into their business and wanted to make sure that those values were put in place. There's a really new startup called Carrot Rewards, and they're an app. And so what they do is they're an app that allows you to get points for having good health behavior. And so what it does is an app that really rewards Canadians with points. Apparently Canadians love points. We're a loyalty community. And it incentivizes people to make healthier choices in their daily life. And you get rewarded by incentives. So it's, again, a new startup that started, I think, about a year ago. And it's been doing a lot of stuff with Health Canada and a lot of different governments, the provincial governments, to kind of grow this awareness and change the behaviors of our Canadians.
That's amazing. And there are so many more early stage companies and large companies as well that are using business as a force for good. And so what is driving this this change towards this incredible social impact that businesses are having on our communities?
Thanks. I would say that there's been a change because I think there's been a real recognition that the way that we've been doing things for a while hasn't really been working for us. 2008 was a really good example of the way that capital markets were structured, as that being the driving force was not really, I mean, we had believed in that promise, and that promise didn't turn out the way that we were told. And so I think people were thinking, well, if that way doesn't work, and I don't even like that way, there's got to be another way. And so I think increasingly consumers, people are being frustrated with that status quo and believe that there must be a better way to do that, and not have to rely on this bifurcated world of, you can either make money or you can make no money but have a good life. And so how do we reconcile that? We have to believe that there's a better way than just separating those two pieces. So I think we're definitely seeing that. Also with this kind of idea of entrepreneurship being a real driving force, now people can create the business they want. They don't just have to work for a company and be stuck with those values. And so I think we're seeing that creative economy really show force. And there are people who actually want to do the thing, who want to build something new, and they have the ability to do so. And so that's another area that I see growing. And I think our awareness of what's happening around the economy around us and what that has done to our societies. Now when a Bangladesh factory has a total disaster. Before we didn't know, and now that we know, we actually could do something about it. And so I think there are many factors that are driving this change in how we use business.
And you're obviously very passionate about this yourself. Are you, or have you ever been a social entrepreneur?
Well, my history is a little funny. I was an accountant, so I worked at KPMG for 8 years. I don't have that entrepreneurship experience, but I did take a year off. After 7 years of working, we called it a Sabbath year with my husband. We took a year off and just decided to travel. And there I got to explore all the different types of businesses that were happening all over the world, in South America and Europe and in Africa and Asia. That really brought forth this spirit of entrepreneurship and taught me a little bit more about what it means to create a business that way. And so when I came back, I was really fortunate to get connected with the Mars Center for Impact Investing and also B Lab, which started about 9 years ago. And being a part of that has been fantastic.
Amazing. It's such a great space to be in. The people that you meet are fantastic. And it's about that shared vision. And you were talking about collaboration earlier and how the B Corp status, allows for greater collaboration within these companies. And so are there mechanisms that help these companies to connect and to collaborate, or is it more so on the marketing level that companies are identifying themselves as B Corp and they're collaborating in that way?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a few ways that we do it. We've got some physical ways of doing it. So B Lab, B Corps actually meet in their local chapters, normally about once a month. So in Toronto, we get together. We're actually working on a challenge called the Diversity Inclusion Challenge this year, where all B Corps are going to pick 3 metrics that they want to improve on within the next year. And we also have an online network called the Beehive, which is kind of like a Facebook for B Corps. And it's a great way for businesses to connect across the globe, because you might not be able to connect with an Australian B Corp. And then we also get together on an annual basis. It's the annual Champions Retreat happens every year, where over 300 B Corps come together to meet and to connect and network and collaborate and just think through some of the big challenges that we face through a business and also through our environment and our economy. And it's always a really cool time to be able to kind of crash and connect that way.
I love that. The community aspect is fantastic. So at these conferences and within the network, you're talking about, the 3 things that they want to improve on the most. Are there areas that are most, I don't think popular is the word, but most needed for improvement among these companies, and they're sharing best practices for specific parts of the B Corp status?
I think every B Corp is different. One of the ways that we had created the impact assessment and the certification community was to say, you get to 80 however you get there. Some people get to 80 with really high environmental impact. Some do it with their employee treatment. It doesn't really matter. It's a very inclusive piece. We get to 80. The last year, I think our leadership team recognized that there was an issue that we really need to address. And that was the idea of a diverse and inclusive economy. And we realized that we could not be credible leaders in this movement if we did not do more to move the needle around diversity and inclusion. And so this year was the first year where we issued a challenge specifically related to this section. There are about 25 metrics in the impact assessment that speak to diversity and inclusion within your workforce, in your supply chain, in your governance piece. And it was kind of the first time we did it, and we took a risk and we said, this may not be the thing that's driving you or the most important. And we're not saying that this should be the most important thing to you. You still have the things that make you, your company, your own. But what can we do as a collective movement to do something to shift the needle? What can we do to influence other businesses to do the same? And what hasn't really been talked about? And so we talk a lot about carbon footprints. We talk about sustainability goals. But this idea of diversity and inclusion is a challenging one. It can be uncomfortable to deal with. But I think it's something that when you're at the forefront of this space, somebody needs to lead the way, and our B Corps are doing that, and it's a really cool thing to be a part of.
That is amazing to hear that you are focusing on inclusivity, because we definitely agree. I mean, you can't have a strong entrepreneurial or innovative economy without focusing on inclusive and ensuring that every Canadian has a spot within that agenda. So that's excellent. So what can we do to make this B Corp movement more widespread, to encourage more and more companies to adopt this mindset within their companies?
Yes. So the one thing I would say is to learn about is to take that assessment tool. So BDC, Business Development Bank of Canada, I think a lot of startups know who they are. They exist to support entrepreneurs. They've been a B Corp for about 4 years. Recently had a really unique partnership with us where they're focused on helping to grow the B Corp community. And they've really focused on the western ports of Canada, but they're also trying to find a way to infiltrate through all of Canada. One of the things that they've done is they created a campaign called Measure What Matters. And it's basically a link to get all their clients to just take the quick impact assessment. I think the best thing we can do is just get companies to start asking questions about themselves when they hadn't done that before. No pressure to certify, but start bringing that into your language. Like, let that be a part of how you do your daily thought and decision-making process. My thing is to get people on the impact assessment, let the awareness be driven. We actually created a media company called Be the Change Media. And so if you go to bethechangemedia.com, you should be able to get access to it. And that was created into the response that we needed to drive awareness of B Corps and social purpose business. And it's meant to be the Rolling Stone for B Corps. And the idea that people identified, 50 years ago that music was more than just music, and it was a culture, and there were stories to be told about these bands and musicians. Similar to B Corps, there are stories that are told around the people who lead these B Corps that I think really affect consumers and employees and attach us to these businesses in a much greater way. And so the Be the Change Media has been created as a way to tell those stories more effectively.
The storytelling aspect is crucial. So can you remind us where we can find Be the Change? Are you across social media? Where can we hear these stories?
Yes, so if you go online to bethechangemedia.com, you'll be able to see it. They do have their own Twitter handle. You can find that on social media. If you follow B Corp Canada or B Corporation, those two Twitter handles will be able to kind of post any type of information around really cool things happening in the space.
Excellent. And we've got a couple minutes left. So for anyone who's joining us on Twitter, please submit your questions now using the hashtag #StartupSchool. But Joyce, you also mentioned something really important, and that is around, just implementing throughout your company. It doesn't have to be at the highest level. It can be, an employee at any level who kind of champions this idea of the language and the qualities and the qualities of being a B Corp. So for those who are interested in being part of this change, but they might not necessarily be the founder or the CEO of their company, what can they do to encourage this through their higher ups?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think we often get a lot of what we call intrapreneurs. So whether they're inside their company and they want to be able to find a way to affect that change, I think the best way for them is to find other champions that they can kind of work with. So other people in their company that they believe also feel the same way about their business, and form kind of like special B teams is what we often say. Those people, the best thing to do is take a crack at the assessment with what you know. Oftentimes, you know a lot about your business because you're in a startup. All that information is normally quite transparent. Start the assessment yourself as a way to educate yourself on where your business is. And when you bring the conversation up to your founder or to your leadership team, you have something to show them that like this, we did some homework. This is where we think we stand. Here are the areas that we think we can improve. And there's a lot of, again, resources that we make available to help people understand what a B Corp is and why there is benefit around it. B Lab does a lot of startup webinars, so thank you Startup Canada for having us as a way to bring us to your network. But we also have webinars that we've got taped, and so if you want to go and take a look at that, that's also a way to help you feel like you're well supported around that.
Excellent. And remind us, where can we find these webinars?
Yeah, so if you go bcorporation.net, there is a section that helps you think through along webinars. And so you can look at, there's a question on how to become a B Corp. And so on those tabs, you can find out the taped webinars as well.
Excellent, excellent. And for those of you at home who are thinking whether or not B Corp is right for you, where can they go to get more information?
Yep, so I would say look at bcorporation.net. I would also Google any type of the businesses that you know are B Corp. So, you can do Ben & Jerry's B Corporation or Beau's All Naturals. As long as you put B Corp in there, that will give you a bit of an idea of why these businesses decided to certify, what were their underlying factors. At the end of the day, there has to be a business case for you to certify. And there is always a business case for having a long-term view on how you build your business. And whether certification is right for you, that's something that you're going to have to decide and know for sure. And so those are the one things that I always say, if you can find other companies, and when you go on bcorporation.net, there's also a tab that says Find a B Corp. You can search by location, by industry, by size, as a way to find out who are the ones that I can relate to, where can I learn more about their story, maybe I can connect with them.
Excellent. And before we wrap up, that was an excellent hour, very, very informative. I know we've got a lot of viewers that are very, very interested in checking out the B Corp assessment. They're probably there right now. But before we wrap up, Joyce, is there anything that you'd like to add? Is there anything that our entrepreneurs should know before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think I would first say thank you so much for having me on here. I do want to say that it starts with you guys. Like, it starts with the entrepreneurs. Sometimes they look at this and say, oh my goodness, there's so much to do and I don't know how to start, and this may not be for me, but you are the businesses that are going to change the way that things are going to be done, whether it's in the next year, 5 years, or in 10 years. And so what kind of business do you want to be, and what kind of a change do you want to affect? And that's all I could say.
Excellent. Well, it was a pleasure having you today, Joyce. Thank you so much. I hope that we have the opportunity to talk about this more and more through our webinar series and through Startup Canada's social media channels, so that we can encourage more early stage entrepreneurs to start thinking about their B Corp status. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
And thank you to everyone who joined us today, all the entrepreneurs, our Startup Canada community leaders, and our members. Thank you so much for tuning in. The learning never stops with Startup Canada, as you all know. So check out our popular Startup Canada Twitter chats, #Startup Chats this Wednesday on Financial Literacy Month, and also on Friday for developing your business as an idea. And please also, we are very excited to be hosting our Startup Canada Awards next week on Tuesday. It's the grand finale. We'll be announcing all of our award winners from across Canada joining us in Toronto. So you can register for this event at startupaward.ca. You can also use the promo code #StartupCanVIP to be entered to win an exclusive VIP experience. So we look forward to seeing you there, and Joyce, hopefully that we'll be there as well. So you can stay informed on all of our latest opportunities by following our Startup Canada Facebook page, also by following us on Twitter, Google, and LinkedIn. So thanks again, everyone. We hope to see you again next week, and have an enterprising week, encouraging that B Corp status startups. Thanks very much.